Hey guys, welcome to this installment of a What's Spinning single, or episode 5.45. What's Spinning singles are the short little episodes that I do in between our regular weekly schedule. And today I just kind of wanted to run through a list of things that I think should be on vinyl, but are not. These are things that are albums to me that I really love and I listen to all the time digitally, but they came out during a time period where CDs were the primary focus, so they just never got released on vinyl, and I find that to be a crime. So number one, I've got Hagfish, Rocks Your Lame Ass. Hagfish is one of my favorite bands. There is one release on vinyl, which is a self-titled album that came out after Rocks Your Lame Ass, but Rocks Your Lame Ass, to me, it and Buick Men would be my two favorite albums of theirs. Buick Men was a small release that they did on Dragon Street Records out of Dallas, and it didn't gain a lot of traction, but kind of became a popular underground release. But then their major label debut was Rocks Your Lame Ass, and it was on CD, and I think it's even on cassette, but there is no copy on vinyl. They do have some singles from this album that were released on vinyl. They're great, but I would like the whole album. After that, I've got two releases from the band Save Ferris. Save Ferris was a female-led ska band in the 90s, and if you've never heard their cover of the song Come On Eileen, I recommend you check that out because it's great. But they had two releases, one called It Means Everything, and then a follow-up to that, Modified. Those are ones that I listen to all the time as well, and I really think they would be great on vinyl. If you've ever seen the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, there's a scene where a band is playing on a rooftop, and that is Save Ferris, so now you know. After that, I've got The Rentals, Return of the Rentals. I love this album. It came out during a time when a lot of people were experimenting with the old Moog synthesizers and kind of trying to bring it back in the 90s. The Rentals was started by Matt Sharp, who used to be the bass player for Weezer. This album of The Rentals also has the drummer from Weezer, Pat Wilson, as well as Petra Haden, who was pretty popular with some indie groups back in that time. Okay, at this point in the list, I do need to confess that a lot of the bands on here are going to be bands that were from Texas or from the Dallas area because they're all albums from the 90s, and that's where I was spending my time in the 90s. So, along those lines, the next band up is called Bob Goblin. So, Bob Goblin was a band, I believe they started in the Denton, Texas area in 94. They had a small release before 12 Point Master Plan, which is the album that I would like on vinyl. A small release before that they independently released called Jet. And then 12 Point Master Plan was a reworking of that album. It had a lot of the same songs, but they were a lot cleaner, and it was on a major label, MCA Records, I believe. The interesting thing to me about Bob Goblin is that they had this fictional concept that kind of went along with them. So it wasn't just the music. They all wore uniforms when they performed live that were numbered, and they, were members of what they called the Black Market Party. And actually, I'll read this straight from their website. So it said, the band started alongside a fictional concept that told the story of a rise in a worldwide nationalist-based movement where a Stalin-esque demagogue fed on the angry white masses, galvanizing them against the other, ultimately resulting in tense dystopia. It was in that environment in which Bob Goblin traveled underground to try to support a rebellion of sorts. Yeah, just a little bit interesting that that's something they came up with in 94 and something that could easily happen today. But back to the album 12 Point Master Plan. It was the only release they did on MCA, and then they had a dispute with the record label and ended up changing their name to Adventures of Jet. So if you've ever heard of that band, that is Bob Goblin as well. All right, the sixth album I have on my list here, and by the way, these are in no particular order. Like, if anyone out there has control to get albums on vinyl and you want to just pick one from this list, that'd be great. I'd love it. So next up on the list is a soundtrack from a movie in the 90s. The movie is called Mad Love, and it had Chris O'Donnell and Drew Barrymore, and the soundtrack to it was great. It had tracks from Magna Pop, 7 Year Bitch, Rocket from the Crypt, just some good stuff that was not necessarily super mainstream, but still was pretty good. They were great songs. The whole movie was set in Seattle, so it was kind of highlighting that scene during that time. And the movie itself, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't that awesome, but the soundtrack is what I love. All right, next is one that I spoke of in my last full episode, and that is the album Bill by Tripping Daisy. As I mentioned, it was their first release. I was talking about their second release at the time, but if someone out there had the powers to put Bill on vinyl, I would be a happy man. After that, I've got another band, Toadies. Toadies and Tripping Daisy will be playing together in April in Dallas. I recommend you get there. The Toadies album, Hell Below, Stars Above. It's one of the few that aren't on vinyl, and it really should be. This was their release after Rubberneck. Rubberneck kind of put them on the map with Possum Kingdom and Away, things like that. Hell Below, Stars Above, interestingly enough, when it came out, I didn't care for it. I had a friend that really loved it, and I didn't understand it. I was like, I don't know why. It's not, to me, it's not as good as Rubberneck, and at the time anyway. Now that time has passed and I listen to it now, I really think it's probably one of my favorite Toadies albums because it's got some good things on there. I just, I'll admit it, I wasn't ready for it at the time. So I recommend that one. Even though it's not on vinyl, I think everyone should go check it out because it's really good. Okay, last up on my list is a band called El Diablo. Now, the name El Diablo, if you just search it on Discogs or the internet, you'll find lots of hits because it's a pretty simple name. I think they're actually the 7th entry of a band called El Diablo in Discogs. But they were a Texas-based band, so they had a guy from a band called Mess. It had Zach and Donnie Blair from Hagfish, and it had Taz Bentley playing drums from Reverend Horton Heat. So this just was kind of a side project. They had an EP that they put out called the 666 EP. The cover just says El Diablo across the top with a big star and Texas underneath. It was just this great hard rock album. I do have a 7-inch by them called Texas Rockers, and I like that one because on the cover it has Chuck Norris with a shotgun and a cowboy hat. But the 666 EP was awesome, and it only came out on CD, and it needs to be on vinyl. All right, so that's my list. Let's kind of just go through it real quickly. I've got Hagfish, Rocks Your Lame Ass. Save Ferris, It Means Everything. Save Ferris Modified.
I don't wanna have to be your friend. I'm so tired of trying to be your friend. I don't wanna have to be your friend no anymore.
The Rentals, Return of the Rentals.
All the circuits blown and the message lost in this machine. Oh, try all the codes, all possibilities, all combinations, but still nothing. Oh.
Bob Goblin, The 12-Point Master Plan. The soundtrack to the movie Mad Love.
I feel coarse and strained. Interrupt my mind again. I am being clear.
Tripping Daisy Bill.
Might your decision, there's no common ground. I'm sick and tired myself. Don't wake me up, don't wake bye-bye, don't jump inside my head.
Toadies, Hell Below, Stars Above. And El Diablo's 666 EP. Now again, these are things that I love, and I love to listen to them on CD or on MP3, but I would love it if they were on vinyl. So I'm putting this out there to the world. Maybe somebody in the record industry will hear this and they'll be like, yeah, let's put that on vinyl. So if that happens, that'll be awesome. Anyone listening, if you want to send me what you think should be on vinyl, some things that you haven't seen, go ahead and interact with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's at Spinning Podcast, or drop me an email at podcast@wildhogrecords.com. All right, that's it for now. Have a good week.